This lesson explains how plants manufacture food through photosynthesis. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define life processes, define autotrophic nutrition, explain the process of photosynthesis, illustrate the importance of chlorophyll through an experiment, illustrate the importance of carbon dioxide through an experiment, and illustrate the importance of sunlight through an experiment.
I wonder, do the functions of living organisms stop when they are sitting or sleeping?
Living organisms perform functions like synthesizing proteins and growing even while they don't seem to be doing anything specific. The processes that help in carrying out these metabolic functions are collectively called life processes. In order to perform these life processes, living organisms need energy. This energy is obtained from food. This entire process of obtaining energy from food is called nutrition. The nutritional processes of living organisms are decided by how complex the organisms are. Plants and a few bacteria use inorganic substances to prepare their food in the form of organic compounds. So they are called autotrophs. The process of nutrition in autotrophs is known as autotrophic nutrition. Fungi and animals cannot prepare their own food and directly or indirectly depend on autotrophs for their food. Such organisms are called heterotrophs, and the process of nutrition in heterotrophs is called heterotrophic nutrition.
So, this plant can prepare its own food?
That's right. Plants prepare food through photosynthesis. The process of using energy in sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into carbohydrates and oxygen is called photosynthesis. Let's look at the basic raw materials needed to perform photosynthesis. Sunlight acts as a source of energy. Carbon dioxide is obtained from the atmosphere. Water is absorbed from the soil by the roots of plants. Leaves have tiny pores on their surface called stomata. Stomata let in the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The carbon dioxide then diffuses into cell organelles called chloroplasts, which carry out photosynthesis. Let's take a closer look at these stomata. If the stomata are open all the time, the plant may lose large amounts of water through them. To prevent this, the stomata are opened only when the plant needs carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Stomata contain guard cells that regulate the opening and closing of stomata. When water flows into them, the guard cells swell and open up the stomata. Similarly, if the guard cells shrink, the pore closes. Chloroplasts are bound by a double membrane. They contain closely packed, flattened sacs called thylakoids, arranged in piles called granum. These granum lie in a colorless ground substance called stroma. Thylakoids contain a pigment called chlorophyll, which traps solar energy.
Interesting. And how does the process of photosynthesis take place?
Photosynthesis involves a series of photochemical reactions that consists of two phases, light and dark reactions. Light reaction takes place in the thylakoids of the chloroplast. Dark reaction takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast. The energy carriers involved in photosynthesis are ATP, adenosine triphosphate, acts as an energy carrier. The third phosphate group in ATP breaks up, releasing ADP, phosphate, and energy. NADP is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate that is used as an electron carrier. NADPH is the reduced form of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate that serves as an energy carrier. As the name suggests, light reaction takes place in the presence of sunlight. Using light energy, water molecules split up to release oxygen. The chlorophyll in the thylakoids of chloroplast traps light energy and excites an electron. This excited electron converts light energy into chemical energy, and this chemical energy is stored as ATP and NADPH. Thus, light reaction produces the energy source ATP and NADPH, but not the food. Dark reaction takes place in the stroma of the chloroplasts by reducing carbon dioxide to carbohydrates, utilizing energy from ATP. It can take place with or without the presence of sunlight. Hence the name dark reaction. By the end of dark reaction, plants prepare glucose. This glucose is used immediately by the cell or stored in the form of starch.
I really detest this light. I wish there was no sunlight on Earth.
Well, actually sunlight is essential for the process of photosynthesis. Let's try this experiment to prove it. Select 2 leaves of approximately the same size from a healthy potted plant. Cover one of the leaves with a black card as shown in the diagram. Place the potted plant in sunlight for several hours. Test both the leaves for the presence of starch using the iodine test. To conduct an iodine test, dip both the leaves in boiling water for a minute to kill the cells. Next, boil the leaves in methylated spirit over a water bath till they become pale due to the removal of chlorophyll. You will find that the surface of the leaf becomes hard and brittle. Place the leaves in a dish and pour iodine solution over them. You will find that the leaf which had been covered with the black card becomes brown. The uncovered leaf becomes blue-black, indicating the presence of starch. Since the leaf of the plant that was exposed to sunlight turned blue-black, you can conclude that light is essential for photosynthesis. Let's conduct a small experiment to prove that chlorophyll is necessary for photosynthesis to take place. Take a potted plant that has variegated leaves, such as crotons. Keep the plant in a dark room for 3 days so that all the starch gets used up. Now keep the potted plant in sunlight for 6 hours. Pluck a leaf from the plant. Mark the green areas in it and trace them using a sheet of tracing paper. Now, dip the leaf in boiling water for a few minutes. This process destroys all the enzymes in the leaf and stops any further chemical changes from taking place. After boiling, immerse the leaf in a beaker of alcohol. Place the beaker in a water bath and heat it till the alcohol begins to boil. You will see that the leaf becomes colorless as it loses its chlorophyll. Now, dip the leaf in a dilute solution of iodine for a few minutes. The green portions of the leaf turn blue-black, indicating the presence of starch. The non-green portions of the leaf turn brown, indicating that starch has not been formed. Since only the green portions of the leaf turned blue-black, you can infer that chlorophyll is essential for photosynthesis to occur. Let's carry out an experiment to prove that carbon dioxide is vital for photosynthesis. Take 2 healthy potted plants of the same size. Keep the potted plants in a dark room for 3 days. Now, place a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide beside one of the potted plants. Potassium hydroxide is used to absorb carbon dioxide. Next, cover both the plants with separate bell jars as shown. Seal the bottom of the bell jars to the glass bottom surface so that the setup is airtight. Keep the plants in sunlight for about 2 hours. Pluck a leaf from each plant and check for the presence of starch using the iodine test. The leaf which was exposed to air turns blue-black. This shows that starch was formed by the process of photosynthesis using carbon dioxide in the bell jar. The leaf from the plant that had potassium hydroxide in the bell jar does not become blue-black. This means photosynthesis did not take place. This was due to the absence of carbon dioxide in the bell jar. This proves that photosynthesis cannot take place without carbon dioxide. Water is another important raw material required for photosynthesis. Terrestrial plants take up water from the soil through their roots. Carbohydrate formation is not possible without the presence of water. Apart from water, plants also absorb nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and magnesium from the soil. Nitrogen is taken in by plants in the form of inorganic nitrates or nitrites. Bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen during nitrogen fixation, which are then utilized by the plants in the form of ammonia. Eat slowly. You'll get indigestion. And make sure you chew your food well before swallowing it. Chewing your food is the first step in the process of digestion. When you chew your food, complex food gets broken down into simpler form. This lesson is about nutrition in different types of organisms. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define heterotrophic nutrition, explain heterotrophic nutrition with respect to unicellular and multicellular organisms, list the organs of digestion, describe the process of digestion in human beings, and explain how saliva prevents tooth decay. Each organism is adapted to its environment. The form of nutrition depends on the type of food as well as how it is obtained by the organism. For example, a deer gets its nutrition from grass, and the tiger in turn feeds on the deer. Animals that depend on plants or other animals for their nutrition are called heterotrophs. This type of nutrition is called heterotrophic nutrition.
Do all heterotrophic organisms take their food in the same manner?
No. Different organisms obtain and ingest their food in different ways. Fungi, like bread molds, yeast, and mushrooms, break down non-living organic material outside their bodies before absorbing it. Parasites like cuscuta, orchids, ticks, lice, leeches, and tapeworms get their food from living host plants or animals without actually killing them. Let's see how animals take in complex food and break it into simpler forms inside their bodies. Unicellular organisms like amoeba and paramecium do not have any special organs for the process of nutrition. They absorb food through their body surface. An amoeba feeds on microscopic animals that live in water. When an amoeba wants to take in a food particle, it encircles the food with its pseudopodia, and the food is enclosed in a food vacuole. The food in the food vacuole is digested by lytic enzymes. The digested food diffuses into the body of the amoeba, whereas the undigested food is thrown out. Unlike an amoeba, a paramecium is slipper-shaped with cilia on its surface. Food is taken in at a specific spot on the body. When a paramecium wants to take in food, its cilia pushes the food particle towards the entry point of the food tube. Inside the body, the food enters a food vacuole, where it is broken down into simpler form. Simple molecules are absorbed and waste material is thrown out. Multicellular organisms have specialized and complex organs for digestion, which form a digestive system. In the digestive system, food is taken in, broken down into a simpler form, and absorbed. The waste material is thrown out. This process of breaking down of complex food material into simpler form is called digestion. This digested food is absorbed by the body cells that provide fuel to live, the energy to work, and the raw material to build new cells. The digestive system is made of the alimentary canal that starts from the mouth and ends at the anus and includes digestive glands such as the liver and pancreas. The alimentary canal is about 30 feet long in adult human beings. Mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, liver, and pancreas are organs in the digestive system. The duodenum, jejunum, and ileum make up the small intestine. The cecum, appendix, colon, and rectum make up the large intestine and anus.
I'm curious. How does the digestive system work?
Food enters the body through the mouth, where it is crushed into smaller particles. When you see, smell, or taste food, salivary glands secrete saliva in the mouth. Saliva moistens the food while you eat and helps to tear it into smaller pieces. Amylase, a digestive enzyme contained in the saliva, breaks down the starch present in the food into simpler sugar. When you swallow food, it moves down into the throat or pharynx. The epiglottis, which is a flap-like structure, closes the windpipe when you swallow, so that you don't choke on your food. Food moves through a narrow tubular muscular organ called the esophagus. The lining of the food canal has muscles that contract and expand rhythmically in order to push the food forward to the stomach. This series of muscular contractions is called peristalsis. At the end of the esophagus, a muscular ring allows the food to enter the stomach and then closes. The muscular walls of the stomach help in churning and mixing the food thoroughly with the gastric juices to break it into smaller pieces. These gastric juices contain chemicals like hydrochloric acid and enzymes like pepsin, renin, and lipase. Hydrochloric acid kills any germs that may have entered along with the food. It also creates an acidic medium which activates the enzyme pepsin. Pepsin breaks down proteins into peptones and proteoses. Renin separates milk into liquid and solid portions. Lipases act on fats and help to break them down. This process continues till the food is turned into a thick liquid called chyme. The acidic food from the stomach reaches the first part of the intestine called duodenum. In the duodenum, fats are present in the form of large globules, which makes it difficult for the enzymes to act on them. These fats are broken down by the bile juice secreted by the liver. The liver is a digestive gland that produces bile and is stored in the gallbladder until it is required. Bile contains bile salts that break down the fat into smaller globules. Bile juice also makes the food alkaline for pancreatic and intestinal enzymes to act on it. The pancreas produces pancreatic juice that contains enzymes such as trypsin and lipase, which help to break down proteins and fats. The chyme now reaches the second part of the small intestine called the ileum. In the ileum, the intestinal enzymes act upon the food for further digestion. The inner walls of the small intestine have numerous finger-like projections called villi. Villi increase the surface area of the small intestine to ensure efficient and rapid absorption of nutrients. The villi are richly supplied with blood vessels which transport the absorbed food to all the cells in the body. The small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal. The length of the small intestine is much shorter in carnivores as compared to herbivores. This is because herbivores eat a plant-based, fibrous diet which takes longer to digest as compared to a meat-based diet. The undigested food and water then move into the large intestine. The inner lining of the colon has villi that absorb any water from solid waste. This solid material is collected in the lower part of the large intestine called the rectum. The appendix is a small, hollow, finger-like pouch which hangs at the end of the cecum. It does not have any function in the digestive system of humans. However, it is functional in herbivores such as cows. The rectum stores the solid excreta until it is ready to be excreted from the digestive system through the anus.
Since saliva contains enzymes, is it harmful for the teeth?
Saliva contains buffering agents that protect the teeth from decay. When we eat something sugary, bacteria produce an acid that attacks the enamel in the teeth. This removes minerals like calcium and phosphate from the teeth and makes them susceptible to decay, thereby forming plaque. Saliva contains minerals that are used to repair tooth decay. At the same time, the buffering agents in saliva neutralize the acids and prevent further decay.
Phew! I am out of breath. Let me get some air.
Air is vital for us as it contains oxygen. Oxygen is used to break down the food we eat into energy. This energy, in turn, is used by us for various activities like running, walking, swimming, and cycling. This lesson is about the process of respiration. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define respiration, differentiate between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, explain how glucose is broken down, define ATP, define diffusion, explain the process of respiration in plants. Explain how the respiration process in aquatic animals is adapted to their environment, and explain the process of respiration in human beings.
I don't understand. We breathe in oxygen but breathe out carbon dioxide?
We breathe or inhale oxygen, which then diffuses into the tissues and breaks down glucose and produces energy. This results in the formation of carbon dioxide and water. The carbon dioxide gets eliminated from the body, but the oxygen remains behind. This process of inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide is called breathing, and the metabolic process for producing energy is known as respiration. Carbon dioxide is present in atmospheric air. However, when we exhale, we breathe out a greater amount of carbon dioxide than the amount that is present in the atmospheric air. Exhaled air is composed of 5.6% carbon dioxide, whereas inhaled air contains 0.03% carbon dioxide. Let's try to prove this through an experiment. Take 2 test tubes containing freshly prepared lime water. Blow air through the lime water in the first test tube. Use a syringe to pass air through the lime water in the second test tube. You will observe that in the first test tube, the lime water turns milky immediately. You will find that it takes longer for the lime water to turn milky in the second test tube as compared to the first test tube. This proves that air contains less carbon dioxide than the amount that we breathe out. Even microorganisms release carbon dioxide. Let's try out an activity to demonstrate this. Take some fruit juice in a flask and add some yeast to it. Fit the flask with a 1-holed cork. Fit the cork with a bent glass tube. Dip the free end of the glass tube into a test tube containing lime water. You will find that the lime water turns milky. From this activity, you can conclude that microorganisms release carbon dioxide. Yeast acted on the sugar present in the fruit juice and released carbon dioxide. This process is called fermentation. Glucose can be broken down both in the presence or in the absence of oxygen. All higher animals need oxygen to break down glucose, while some microbes break down glucose in the absence of oxygen. Food in the form of glucose breaks down into carbon dioxide and water. Since this process takes place in the presence of oxygen, it is known as aerobic respiration. Organisms that break down their food in this manner are called aerobic organisms. There are a few microbes that break down glucose into alcohol and carbon dioxide. This process takes place without oxygen and is hence known as anaerobic respiration. Such organisms are called anaerobic organisms. In both aerobic and anaerobic organisms, when respiration takes place, a glucose molecule that contains 6 carbon atoms is broken down into a molecule that contains 3 carbon atoms. This new molecule is called a pyruvate. This entire process takes place in the cytoplasm of the organism. In aerobic organisms, the pyruvate molecule is further broken down in the mitochondria of a cell. In this process, the pyruvate molecule that contains 3 carbon atoms is broken down into 3 molecules of carbon dioxide and 3 molecules of water. Sometimes our muscle cells may not have enough oxygen. In this case, the pyruvate molecules are broken down in the anaerobic process. Pyruvate molecules get converted into lactic acid, which is also a 3-carbon molecule. This lactic acid builds up in our muscle cells and causes cramps. Both aerobic and anaerobic respiration releases energy. This energy is used to combine adenosine diphosphate (ADP) and inorganic phosphate to form adenosine triphosphate (ATP) molecule. ATP is the molecular currency for the transfer of energy in most cellular processes. The energy released in the aerobic process is 19 times greater than in the anaerobic process. When the terminal phosphate linkage in ATP is broken using water, energy equivalent to 30.5 kilojoules per mole is released. The energy from ATP is used for cellular activities such as the contraction of muscles, protein synthesis, and conduction of nervous impulses. Stomata are small openings seen on the lower surface of the leaves. The leaves have large intercellular spaces in between the mesophyll cells. This ensures that all the cells are in contact with air. Carbon dioxide and oxygen are therefore exchanged through the stomata by diffusion. Diffusion is the process by which a gas from an area of high concentration will move to an area of relatively low concentration until an equilibrium is reached. During the day, carbon dioxide generated during respiration is used up for photosynthesis. Therefore, carbon dioxide is not released. Instead, oxygen is released as a result of photosynthesis. At night, photosynthesis does not occur, but respiration continues. Therefore, only carbon dioxide is released. Animals have different organs for respiration depending on their environment. Animals that live on land take in oxygen from the atmosphere. Aquatic animals, on the other hand, use oxygen that is dissolved in water.
I wonder why goldfish open and close their mouths so many times.
Fish take in water through their mouths. This water has dissolved oxygen in it, which diffuses into their blood. The water is then forced out through their gills. The amount of dissolved oxygen in water is much lower when compared to the amount of oxygen in air. So, the rate of breathing in aquatic organisms is much faster than in terrestrial organisms. This is why a fish opens and closes its mouth a far greater number of times as compared to the number of times you breathe in and out. Terrestrial animals have special organs for taking in oxygen from the atmosphere. All these organs have a structure that is in contact with the atmosphere. This structure increases the surface area for diffusion of air into the organs. The surface of this structure is very fine and delicate in order to allow diffusion of gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen. Since this surface is delicate, it is placed within the body. There are passages in the body that transport the air to this surface, allowing diffusion to take place.
I have a cold. I can't seem to breathe properly.
In human beings, air is drawn into the body through the nostrils. Nostrils are lined with fine hairs and mucus that filter the air as it passes through. Next, the air travels through the throat and then moves through the rings of cartilage called the trachea. The trachea ensures that the air passage does not collapse. From here, the air passes through the bronchi before entering the lungs. The bronchi are like a network of tubes that keep branching into smaller tubes. At the end of each bronchus, you will find balloon-like structures called alveoli. The alveoli provide a surface for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The walls of the alveoli contain a massive network of blood vessels. When we breathe in, we lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm. As a result, the chest cavity becomes larger. Air gets sucked into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. The oxygen in the alveoli is taken in by the red blood cells in the alveolar blood vessels. The oxygen in the red blood cells is then transported to all the cells in the body. The cells in turn release carbon dioxide, which diffuses into the blood and is then released into the alveoli. It is difficult for oxygen to reach all parts of the body through diffusion in larger animals. Hemoglobin, a pigment present in red blood cells, binds with oxygen from the air in the lungs, forming oxyhemoglobin. Later, through oxyhemoglobin, oxygen is distributed to tissues all over the body. The tissues in turn release carbon dioxide, which diffuses into the nearby blood capillaries. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than in oxygen. Therefore, carbon dioxide is generally transported through blood as bicarbonate, which is its dissolved form.